Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Miss Valley Entertainment News. My name is Dread. We're getting into a... Oh, words. They're so difficult. We're jumping into a video that I call... I don't know. What am I calling? The video games crash. The video games companies crash. The crashing of the companies and the games and the videos and the things and everything's piling in. And it's crashing. That's just what I'm calling it. I don't know. We have a couple of videos by RGT85. This one's from 6 days ago, called The Video Game Crash of 2024 is Here, followed by one from 4 days ago, called Proof The Video Game Crash of 2024 is Here. Let's get into these. Let's go.
I am marking this official, folks. We are in the great video game crash of 2024, and things are going to get worse before I feel that they get
they're
better.
Going to get
now,
much
I have a lot
worse.
of things to say on this topic, but before we get really too deep into it, we have to talk about the last video game crash that we saw in history, because that's where many people's minds are going to go, and they're going to compare and contrast 1983 to 2024. Now, the video game crash of 1983, I feel, has been...
I was not even playing games. I was 12 years old. I wasn't playing video games at the time. I was playing like board games. In fact, I was making my own board games to play as a 12-year-old.
Well, misconstrued by history, because yes, in America, there was a video game crash. Retailers didn't want to sell video games anymore because of the stigma attached to them, but that was a very regional thing. You see, at that point in time, video games wasn't really like a huge worldwide phenomenon. There was primarily 3 different regions where video games were either created or enjoyed.
Japan, Europe, America, right?
But there was also the UK and Japan. Now, in 1983, the UK did not have a crash. They had their little weird computer things, Commodores and stuff like that. Stuff I never really played, but they weren't impacted by it.
Interesting.
Japan obviously wasn't impacted by it because the Famicom came out in 1983 there, which you know now as the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was released in 1985, years after the crash, and it wasn't positioned as a video game console in North America. It was positioned as an entertainment system to sort of right the wrongs of the video game industry. I feel like there are some parallels happening with the video game crash of 2024 and that of 1983. Now, obviously, gaming has become an entirely different beast than it was during those times.
Absolutely.
It's a lot bigger. There's more money. There's more suits. There's more executives. There's bigger productions. And most importantly,
I look at the crash of the industry as being brought on by the industry, first of all. And it's just the beginning of the crash, people. This could last years. I look back to what I consider the crash of music. I grew up with heavy metal, hard rock and heavy metal music, and some punk. But heavy metal took a real hit through the 90s. By the mid-90s, I mean, there was not a lot of heavy metal getting play anywhere. It had just been abandoned, been a staple of MTV at one time, it's been, staple of radio play and everything else. It was abandoned, at least in North America. Probably most places in the world it was. Pop reigned supreme. Grunge, of course, in the 90s. Pop after that. Pop and R&B and rap for a while. But there was a real dearth, a real death of good, hard music for the most part. Couldn't be found. They didn't want to push it, and it just kind of went away, but it didn't. It was a lot of bands still doing their own thing in their own town, holding little shows in halls, practicing in their basements, in their garages. And eventually it kind of came back around very slowly, but around, 2000-ish, things started to pop a little bit. You began to see some videos being made by some pretty hard bands. Like I think about Static X as one. They were the one who brought me back into the hard music with their Wisconsin Death Trip album. Anyways, I'm saying this because it went underground. What people were looking for went underground. People didn't just stop wanting the music. They stopped giving it to us. And they started pushing other things. It eventually came back. Hard music came back, but it was much changed and it took a long time and a lot of struggle. That's where we are with the gaming industry right now. They're not giving us what we want. They're choking us with other stuff we don't want. And we're getting less and less and less of what we want. And it's going to take a lot of time for that to come back around, unfortunately. So when you find a game you love right now, hold it close, hold it dearly. Because you may need to play it for a few more years than you thought. Words of wisdom on this. Let's go back to RGT85.
Importantly, you have this worldwide reach where people in other regions that usually weren't playing video games in the mid 80s unless there was some sort of importing that they did are now able to enjoy the same video games that everyone does pretty much everywhere. Now obviously there are some restrictions with that, but for the most part, for the most part you can access video games no matter where you live. But we are seeing some huge things happening in 2024. And like I said, I don't think this is going to get any better. I think it's just going to get worse. Yeah. And you're going to see more and more of this. Yeah. First and foremost, let's talk about all the layoffs that we are seeing within the video game industry. Because, I mean, this is not an isolated thing. Bungie of all people, they used to be the Halo people. They laid off a ton of people. Rocksteady Games has announced that they are laying off people today. It seems like every day you wake up, you're hearing about more layoffs in the video game industry. Hell, Visions of Mana's team, the game came out, and the same day the game came out, they laid off a bunch of people and are allegedly closing the studio that made that game. So why is this happening, though? You see all these reports about video games basically generating all of this revenue, so you would think that things would be better for the industry and that everything would be smooth sailing. Well, there's a myriad of reasons for that. First and foremost, let's talk about corporate greed, because corporate greed is something that does indeed exist.
So the higher ups in the companies get paid very fucking well. Yeah. Big shock.
You have these suits and these executives who, I mean, they don't care about video games. They might act like they do, but honestly, they really don't care. What do they care about? Money. They care about making shareholders happy. So they try to hop onto the latest trends. They try to make games that they think are going to sell very well based on maybe other IPs and other video games that have come along. I feel like Concord is a perfect example of this. Concord exists in the size and scope that it does because of Herman Hulst of Sony. Herman Hulst of Sony played this.
Just want to point out Concord no longer exists, but moving on.
This game years ago and was like, wow, this game's awesome. This is going to transform everything. So Sony went out of their way to acquire this studio. Sony went out of their way to pump this game up. I don't think this game was going to have a budget the size that it ended up having, but reports are coming out now that this budget for Concord was $250 million. $250 million for a basic hero shooter that doesn't do anything really outside of the norm, that doesn't have identifiable characters in terms of people that you would see and be like, oh, well, this is a hero shooter. These are our heroes. We're using, known entities and known IPs. No, there's none of that. This was a $250 million disaster.
Yep.
Suicide Squad, another live service game that nobody asked for. We're talking.
This has got like known iconic characters at least, but they butchered some of them, most of them.
Talking about Rocksteady here, a company that is known for excellent single-player games such as the Batman Arkham series. These are some of the greatest video games of all time. I don't care what anyone says. And I think that making these talented individuals, even though the original studio heads had left the company, maybe they saw the writing on the wall, to make Suicide Squad a game that completely failed, a game that had no player base at launch, a game that you looked at this game and you were like, no, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted.
Nope.
And now we're seeing layoffs. Now we're seeing the failures of this game. Now, companies do have the luxury of writing things off. But what ends up happening is for every failure that we see, the video game companies adjust what they're doing.
So they're less likely to greenlight a game, especially something that actually does something new or innovative, because they need the money. They're bleeding money, so they keep going back to the well. They keep going back to just copy what everybody else did. And then you get oversaturation, and they kill everything. They're literally killing everything.
And they're looking at what went right and what went wrong. But a lot of times we don't learn from our mistakes. And that kind of leads me into really what I feel is the main point for this crash right now that we are going to see, and we're going to continue to see, are these ridiculous high budgets.
That doesn't help.
Game studios are overinflating the budgets for these games. Games are costing so much more to make now than they did even 5 to 10 years ago. And when you're constantly trying to, chase trends and, find out what like the hottest thing is, like Concord is a product of Overwatch. Suicide Squad is the product of live service games that, 5 years ago or so, they were seen as, new and exciting things. They were seen as something that was different within the video game landscape. But even going back then, you still had failures. Think about games like Lawbreakers and stuff like that. Lawbreakers came and went in the middle of the night. Think of how many games with a strictly multiplayer focus that have, maybe a low price of entry, or maybe they're even free, but rely on things like microtransactions and season passes to, survive. Think of how many games are in that graveyard compared to the games that have succeeded. See, that's the thing. It's almost like a drug addict. You're constantly trying to, get that new high. You're trying to reach that new plateau. You're trying to emulate what you're seeing other companies do instead of just focusing on what you want to do.
And you know what? I'm going to point out something really obvious, but not obvious at the same time. It's the same thing in YouTube. If you constantly chase after the money, as a YouTube channel, as a YouTube content creator, if you constantly chase after the money, if you're constantly looking at what other channels are doing and trying to pull and grab things out of there in order to make your channel better, if you're constantly looking at all the figures that YouTube puts out, looking at your audience, what else is my audience looking at? Where's my audience lacking? What age group do I need to reach out to more? How do I make my content more pleasing for people? Blah, 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 blah. You lose sight of just doing things that you love and not worrying about that. And if you grow, you grow. And if you don't, you don't. It doesn't matter. And I'm blessed to be in that situation. I've only been in this business for 4 years, a little over 4 years. This business. I don't make any money. But I have chased trends. I have gone over the numbers until it drove me crazy. I've looked at other channels. None of that stuff helped me. It made my life fucking miserable. Fucking miserable. Because it was always, why is my channel not better? Why am I not doing better? Oh my God, why do people not like me? It's a terrible, terrible trend to get into. You're a YouTuber, or you're a Twitch person, or whatever. Just do what you love and stop thinking about the trends, the people, the money, and what others are doing. Just do what you love. You're like, Dread, that's not going to guarantee me to make money. No, it's not. If you want to make money, get a job.
You're seeing Xbox in a topsy-turvy. Are they a console manufacturer? Are they a video game publisher? Are they a video game developer? Are they a multi-platform studio? Am I supposed to play on Xbox? Am I supposed to play on my TV? Am I supposed to play my Xbox games on my PlayStation? And people think that this is a viable option for them, and I guess time will indeed tell, but I feel like it just feels very strange. And I know what you're saying to yourself. Well, how can there be a crash if Nintendo still exists? Because Nintendo's success has been unparalleled this generation. And you're right. However, you do have to factor in a couple different things, such as right place, right time. The Nintendo Switch launched at an optimal time because there wasn't a myriad of handheld devices as we see now, with all these different companies making various handheld devices that will play your Steam games, and the Steam version of the game runs better than the Switch version of the game. Of course, the pandemic really helped out Nintendo because everyone and their mother bought a Nintendo Switch and Animal Crossing because people were stuck at home. But that also factors into the sort of crash mentality I have right now, is a lot of these studios, a lot of these suits, you know, they saw the success of the video game industry during the pandemic, and for some reason it didn't click in their head that the reason that this success is happening is because people are stuck at home.
They're stupid.
They have nothing to do.
They're just stupid. All they saw was dollar signs. That's it.
Literally cannot leave your domicile. So of course you're going to look for some sort of entertainment. That's why retro gaming prices skyrocketed. That's why all these movie subscription services skyrocketed. But you have these dumbass executives who just think, oh, well, hey, this is going to last forever. Look at me. I wear a suit and tie. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? How did you get this job? And I know that this hurts a lot of developers. Man. And I know that, you know, these huge budgets cause things like layoffs, but you know, while there are really good developers out there and they're really just doing what they're told to by the higher ups, I feel like this hostility towards consumers that we see a lot of these developers have, like it's not exactly making for like a positive sphere here. If somebody doesn't like your game, like that's okay. You know, and yes, people will take it to extremes.
Stop arguing it.
My videos to extremes. There will be people in the comment section here probably saying terrible things about my beautiful mustache or me as a person or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to
Or your fucking New York Knicks hat. Dude, I will send you a Lakers hat. Fucking stop wearing that shit.
Entertain them and attack them over and over again, because all that's going to do is create yet another situation. All that's going to do is create more hostility. And yeah, it can be easier said than done to interact with every single troll, but like these game developers just seem to like fall into these traps, like Brian 6767 42069 Blaze It on Twitter. You know, some random throwaway account that's clearly not a real person, but they're interacting with these people. I feel like this new generation of developers almost feels like they're owed something.
They're stupid.
We made this game. This game should be successful. And it's like, no, this is a consumer-driven industry. All of these video game companies exist to entertain people. And if they're not able to keep their budgets in line, and they're not able to release games in a satisfactory stage when these games do release, then maybe we need a crash.
I'm going to stop it right there. If you want to watch the last 4 minutes of this video, check out the link down below. We're going to jump into the second video by RGT85 2 days later. Proof the video game crash is here. Let's go. By the way, you really got to get rid of that New York Knicks hat. Really do.
All right, so a couple of days ago on the channel, I made somewhat of a controversial video talking about how the video game crash of 2024 was indeed here.
Not controversial
I
at
cited
all.
some examples, I gave you guys my opinions on it, and really, I mean, at the end of the day, it is an opinion piece that I created. However, you guys seem to be really interested in that video. That video did absolute banger numbers, so first and foremost, thank you for watching it. Thank you for interacting with the video. And even if you disagreed with it, like I said, you know, that's cool, because really at that time, it was more so just my thoughts on the overall
By the way, RGT85 is a great guy to Sorry, I just got distracted by something in my YouTube feed here, my suggestions. Oh my god. RGT85 is a great guy to subscribe to if you haven't already. Consider doing so. He has some interesting takes on a lot of things. Anybody heard of Ryan George, the internet comedian? He has a video in my feed. I'm in the way of it right now. It's called "If Dogs Had Podcasts," and he's in front of a microphone dressed up as a dog. Sorry, very distracting. Ryan George, go check him out on YouTube. He's quite the guy.
Happenings within the video game industry. But since that video, we've actually had a lot of proof that sort of backs up my theories that I created in that video. And more importantly, I got some inside information on video game distribution that will absolutely shock you and sort of draw parallels to the original video game crash that happened in the United States back in 1983. So if you didn't watch the initial video, I highly suggest you watch that video first. I guess technically you can watch it after this, but there's some brand new information that I need to bring to the forefront.
Look, if you don't get on with it, I'm going to watch the dog podcast video.
With this, because it paints a very interesting picture that doesn't sound very good. So first and foremost, let's get into some hardcore proof of things that have happened within the past few days.
Oh, he's bringing
Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming. Ubisoft stock tanks to a 10-year low after lukewarm Star Wars Outlaws launch. Now,
what's going to happen after Assassin's Creed Shadows launches? Whoa! A new low.
Now, I actually made a video on this yesterday talking about the situation in the UK, but I did say that there were some caveats with that. Obviously, the UK is just one specific region, and when you're talking about the UK, you know, we were only basing it kind of on physical sales, not any sort of digital sales. And obviously the digital forefront has become something that is very important within video games.
I just want to point out, I hate that style of platforming. Nobody in the fucking world can actually do that. It's so ridiculous.
But there are still retailers in the UK that are selling physical games, so you wouldn't expect it to do, you know, slightly better than a game like Avatar, which didn't have all of the hype and production value that Star Wars Outlaws had. Star Wars Outlaws is Ubisoft's most, highest paid sort of advertising campaign. It's the most money that they've spent on an advertising campaign for a video game. So factor that in with the fact that it's using a Disney property, which of course costs a lot of money, as we've established with games like Spider-Man, and of course the fact that they probably want this game to sell 10 to 15 million at full retail price. If the stocks are already starting to take a hit, like, that's not a good thing. Now, I do understand stocks ebb and flow all the time because, I mean, I have some stocks. I understand how that works, and it could rebound very quickly. But to see such a large drop because of this one game isn't painting a very good picture for Ubisoft. But of course, we have to talk about layoffs as well, because layoffs are something that I talked about in my initial video, talking about all of the layoffs that we've seen in 2024, things like Visions of Mana, a game that just came out and now the studio is shutting down. But what about doing layoffs on a game that actually has not even released yet, but is still scheduled to release? Oh, well, we have something with that too, folks. Don't you worry your pretty little head. VGC reporting that the studio behind the PS5 and PC version of Until Dawn, meaning the remake / remaster of it, so it doesn't have anything to do with the original version of the game, because this isn't coming to the PlayStation 4, but the studio behind the PS5 and PC version of Until Dawn has announced significant layoffs ahead of the game's release. Now, Until Dawn is actually one of my favorite PS4 games. So when it was announced to be getting an enhanced version for PlayStation 5, I was actually kind of interested in it. But then I thought to myself, well, it needs to be priced right. I actually said in a previous video, I need to see like a $40 price point for this because they're not really doing much besides just upgrading the engine and making the game look prettier. However, if you play the PlayStation 4 version on your PlayStation 5, you do get resolution and frame rate enhancements in the game. So it's almost like kind of like a free sort of remaster thing. When you look at how, of course, other games have been ported from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, there was a $10 upgrade path, to which if you had the PlayStation 4
bunch of
game,
naked people. That was terrible. I'm not commenting on this stuff because right now he's talking PlayStation stuff, and I have nothing to add about PlayStation stuff. PlayStation? That's a console, I think? I don't know. I have literally nothing to say about it. I'm a PC gamer. I've never used a PlayStation. I've never held a PlayStation controller. I know nothing about PlayStation. I fully admit that. No Xbox fans. Stop being like, yeah, he's an Xbox fan. No, I've never held an Xbox controller either. No interest in either of those things. Appreciate the people that use both those consoles and play games on them, and that they're passionate gamers. Not putting anybody down. I just don't use them.
you paid $10, you got the PS5 version. They're not doing this with Until Dawn. Actually, what they're doing is charging you $60 US for this game. This is just as egregious as Donkey Kong Country Returns HD for the Nintendo Switch. I will never stop bad-mouthing that game, and I will never stop bad-mouthing, full-priced things that are just graphical enhancements. If you're changing core mechanics of the game, you're adding in substantial content, not a funky Kong, I can understand it. But when you're making a game that already exists, that already looks really good, and you're just making it look a little bit better, and you're not adding in any other sort of incentive, and there's no sort of upgrade plan, when you could clearly do an upgrade plan.
Make it $30, not
there's
$60.
going to be more studio layoffs, a buzzword that we have heard all throughout of 2024, from big companies to small companies to everyone in between. There have been layoffs every single day, it seems like, in 2024 for the video game industry.
There's been a lot.
Now, is that the sign of a healthy industry? Is that the sign of something that is thriving? Or is it a sign of something that is failing? Yep. Also yesterday on the channel, we of course, Of course, as also, if you don't have a live service game and you're not needing to do maybe a lot of bug fixes or anything, because in this case, like he says, it's just graphical enhancements, the game's already out. Once you finish working on the game and you're getting ready just to market it and put it out, you need marketing and sales. What else do you need? And if you're not currently, ready to switch your other people over to another game, then yeah, I guess you do lay them off. Sucks, but it kind of makes sense too. Talked about Concord, because what an absolute disaster Concord ended up being. Because look, if you didn't catch my video yesterday, they're shutting down Concord now on September 6th, and they're going to try to retool it and figure it out. Essentially, probably try to make this game a free-to-play thing. Well, guess what, pal? That's not saving this game. You're not saving this game, Herman Holt.
No, but they're going to try. They're going to try. Trying to prove that we were wrong. They were just slightly wrong, and everybody else was completely wrong. They're still not listening, are they? They're really not.
This should come out, some of this should come out of your salary, because you wasted 8 years, $250 million.
8 years. How many people worked on the game, do you think? I don't know. Let's say a team of 50 people worked on the game for 8 years. Okay? I'm just going to write this down. 50 people, 8 years. How much did they make per year, each of them? Let's say they made $50,000. I'm writing this on paper like you can see it. But let's say they made $50,000 a year each, those developers. So $50,000 times 50 people. Oh my God, math. That's 2.5 million right there. Isn't it? I wrong? Uh-huh. Yeah, that would be 2.5 million right there. And that's just in a year. I mean, and then you times that by 8. That's like 20. That's like $20 million right there, just in salary. How much do you think the head guy on the company got as a bonus every year? Probably 50,000. Probably a lot more at the end. Maybe 150,000 at the end when the game's ready to come out. Give or take. So say 500,000. Might be a lot more than that. I'm probably being very non-generous. But that's 20.5 million. Just right there. Just what you paid in salaries. You probably got more salaries than that because you got other people who aren't just developers on the team. Your marketers, your everybody else. What you paid in marketing, what you paid in, I don't know. But the team is probably a lot bigger than 50 people. Okay. So it's probably a much higher number than that. But the astronomical amounts people are spending on games is crazy. Crazy. And of course, they pass that back to consumer. Now they need great reviews when they come out, so they'll buy them. They need great sales figures, great pre-sales figures. They need long watch time of people playing so that it boosts all their numbers. They need to make the game more expensive. Purchase. This is a vicious fucking cycle. Vicious.
On a game that lasted literally 1 week, a game that nobody asked for, a game that nobody besides toxic positivity peddlers on social media really seemed to be interested in. Everyone around you was saying, hey, this probably isn't a great idea, but you went through with it anyways. You decided that you needed to buy Firewalk, and there's some questionable things happening at Firewalk as far as employees are concerned, but looking at the overall picture of this really was just a game nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and then you released it and it completely failed. Where is the accountability? Because you made this company continue to create this game and raise their budgets and stuff like that. Somebody needs to be held accountable. And Herman Holst, I believe, is the person that needs to be held accountable. Now, of course, with a game like this, there is the whole DEI, the woke failure, stuff like that. And I want to talk about that too before we get into our final topic, which is going to absolutely blow your mind. Now, as far as that stuff is concerned, it's a very sensitive topic. Do I feel like stuff like that could have played a role in Concord? To some degree, yeah. When you look at the roster of characters in Concord, I don't really think there's many characters that look very interesting or hero-ish for a 5-on-5 hero shooter. Now, of course, it seems like they focus more on the characters and building lore for the characters and giving the characters pronouns instead of like focusing on making a high-quality game that you plan on charging people. I think that did sort of impact some people's decisions not to pick up Concord, but you also have to look at it from a perspective of a lot of gamers aren't terminally online like you and I are. Like, people that watch this channel, they're rather informed about what's happening and what's going on, at least from my perspective. But a casual gamer doesn't know about the inner workings of the industry, doesn't really know about, how this sort of stuff is being done. They're looking at it from a strictly game perspective. And the casual market wasn't interested in this game. The hardcore market wasn't interested in this game. The modern audience segment, they weren't interested in this game. There was no audience for this game. And I think even if you had, characters that were a little bit cooler and something that was more, akin to what you expect to see in a hero shooter. And let's just call a spade here. Even if you stripped away all of the characters and their pronouns and stuff like that, I still don't think it makes for a good game. Because at the end of the day, a good game that's fun is the most important thing. It's not about the characters. It's not about this, that, or the other, or the story or something like that, although the story does play a role. To me, and this is just me speaking, you can feel differently. I don't care.
Nice.
As long as the game is really good, like I don't really care that much about, you know, what character I'm playing as, especially in
I get what you're saying. If the story's good, but you want the characters to be good and have a character arc and that kind of thing, but you don't get that in these kind of games. You know, that's more of a single player game where you're going to get that or hope to get that.
in a multiplayer game. You get what I'm saying? In a multiplayer game, there's not really supposed to be a heavy story or anything like that. But Concord failed. Dead. You're not saving this game. Free to play is not going to, nothing is going to save this game. You wasted all this money and all this time. Good job, video game industry. You're completely healthy. But I say all that, and those were just the recent examples. And I want to get into the information that I got yesterday.
Let's do it.
Because the more I thought about this, I received a phone call from a friend. And the more I thought about this, the more it absolutely blew my mind. And this is on the video game
RGT. You're showing way too much clips of the same effing clip over and over and over again till my brain is screaming. Show your face more, please.
distribution side of things, primarily focusing on physical games. Because physical games, as you and I have been told, are slowly going the way of the dodo. You know, digital sales are up, even though if a game only releases digitally, that's accounted for in that as well. Like mobile games and stuff, they count all that in the digital versus physical thing. But digital sales are skyrocketing. Nobody's buying physical media. So we're going to this all digital age that all these companies want to push on you, because then they can
tell you that they don't have to support your game a couple of years later, and you don't own it anyway, so don't worry about it.
Can control the market. But here's where things get very interesting. What is going on with the physical distribution of video games? Because it seems like there has been a massive change that nobody's talking about until now, because I have the information. As far as this individual told me, Ingram Entertainment is a company that you've probably never heard of before unless you own a mom and pop shop or you are a big box retailer. Ingram Entertainment was basically responsible for supplying most big companies with physical media, including video games. They had a long list of companies that worked with them, from companies like Nintendo to Sony.
So they're a wholesaler from 1981. Dealing in home entertainment products like DVDs, audiobooks, video game software, and hardware. Nation's largest distributor of DVD software at one time. Okay.
And Microsoft to smaller companies, middleware companies, middle ground companies. All of this sort of stuff worked with Ingram Entertainment. And they were one of the largest distributors of physical media, including physical video games. They supplied not only mom and pop shops, but they did Walmarts, they did Best Buys, they did Targets, and so many more. I can't really comment on the other things, but if you're supplying Walmart and Best Buy with product, you're a big player in this.
Oh, yeah.
You are controlling the physical video game marketplace because you're working with these big companies, and these are the companies.
So they had 14 locations in the U.S. You're thinking 14 locations, that's not much. That means 14 warehouses where they're shipping to all over the U.S. That's a lot.
That are still selling physical games. Well, Ingram Entertainment actually shut down towards the tail end of 2023. In September 2023, the company announced its closure. So expenses are exceeding sales, so it's time to exit. And that was it. They closed up shop. So now you have this sort of gap that's happening with this. Now, another company came along called Allied Entertainment that is sort of filling the gap that Ingram Entertainment left when it comes to physical media. However, Allied Entertainment doesn't have nearly the same long client list as Ingram did. You still have your heavy hitters, your Nintendos, your Sonys, your Xboxes. But when it comes to smaller companies or middle of the road companies like a NIS America or something, or NIS, I don't know how you say it, the company that makes all the quirky JRPG stuff, Allied Entertainment actually doesn't have deals with them for physical distribution. Now, what's the point of me saying all of this? What is the point of Ingram Entertainment leaving the market, Allied kind of taking up the space, have to do with the video game crash? Think of the timeline with this. When did we start seeing places like Target and Best Buy start to phase out their physical media when it comes to video games? When did the video game sections start shrinking to a point of even completely disappearing? I believe it was the first part of 2024 when Ingram was out and Allied was in. You see what I'm getting at here? What was the cause for the video game crash of 1983? Retailers didn't want to sell video games anymore. And with this shift, now, once again, companies, retailers are not wanting to sell video games anymore.
Are they not wanting to, or they just no longer have their supplier? Their supplier who was spending more money than they were bringing in, so they had to close, which means they weren't moving enough units. So people already weren't buying them. RGT, are you sure your logic on this one?
They're shrinking their things. Think about how when you walk into a GameStop, it's like 40% video games, 60% other crap. And it could be even more varied. It could be 25-75, depending on what sort of GameStop you have in your area. So what I'm saying with this is it's almost like physical media, even though there is still a place for it. You've seen time and time again, physical media sales do very well. When you restrict the amount of physical media that is out there, and when you shut down distribution chains and companies that are distributing to these retailers, these brick and mortar retailers, and you start to kill off that pipeline, well, what's going to happen? A large segment of people don't like digital purchases, even the younger generation.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I'm sure I know I've got people who follow my channel who still swear by digital or by physical copies of games. And good on you. So, I mean, I went with Steam a long time ago, but that's me, just for the ease of it. But I've got physical copies of games, and I've got videos on this for Dragon Age 2. I got physical copies of games that I still can't play. Because even though I've got a physical copy, I still don't own the game, and I still can't play it. But if you're still buying physical copies, and you're buying physical copies of things you can play, and you believe you're going to be able to play forever, more power to you.
Are starting to see the ramifications of digital purchases. If you were a little kid and bought a game on the Xbox 360, what are you doing with that game now? Do you still have access to that game, or has that game been pulled? So there still is a market for physical media. That's why limited run games exist in the space that they do, and they're making money hand over fist. But when you start to limit the distribution of video games, are people just going to automatically go to all digital, or are people going to buy less video games because there's not as many options to purchase them?
Okay, but you're going to get less sales of physical copies is what you're saying. If you're saying that's a sign of the crash, I'm going to say, what percentage of sales are physical compared to digital? Because I got to think overwhelmingly digital right now. Overwhelmingly. I would guess 95% or up has to be digital. I don't have the numbers on that. I don't know if he's going to give them or not. But if you're only get a small percentage of physical sales, and then you get some of that bumped down because not as many people buying them or whatever, is that really going to cause a crash? I don't know.
You're forcing an all digital thing, and maybe, just maybe, the consumer doesn't want that. Well, if this doesn't sound like a video game crash to you, I mean, I don't know what else you want.
Fair enough. I'm going to leave it there. You want to watch the last 2 minutes of the video, check it out below. Everybody, I'm picking up enough of your time, 43.5 minutes at this point on this video. If you stay till the end, drop down in the comments and let me know you watched the whole thing. I do appreciate you all, though. I know your time is precious. I won't take any more of yours. Definitely something to ruminate on, something to think over. I mean, even without what he said here, I do believe the video game crash is happening. I believe it started probably last year, actually, but we're seeing it start to pick up speed this year. I think next year is going to be worse. And I think the vitriol pointed at YouTubers like RGT, like myself, like Smash JT, like many others out there who are calling out the video games and the video game industry is going to ramp up dramatically. They are going to try to force those people off the internet to get their voices silenced so they can keep you, the consumer, stupid. That's their goal. Not to get any better themselves, just to keep you stupid. By taking away your ability to hear the truth while they continue to lie to you. That's what I think. This is going to get worse next year, may get worse the year after. Good games are going to go underground. Start checking out solo single developers. That's my advice. Everybody, this is my video on the Give Video Game Crash. And for Miss Valley Entertainment News, my name is Dread. Thank you all so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.